And you might even not have to abolish it. It would be repudiated. But, there are people who don't want that, so there'd be other laws that would be passed, and there'd be other crackdowns. I know of a man in somewhere in the middle of the country. He's putting out silver coinage, and so the government just raided him, took everything he had, took his files, took his what he had in his warehouse, took everything. But one interesting thing is there's a group of Indians that have started private coinage, the Lakota Indians.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Finally, some Indians are doing something other than building a casino. So that's good too, and I want to see more of it. Now, we're in the silver state here, aren't we?
We are.
Idaho's the silver state.
Well,
it means there must be silver in the ground here somewhere.
Yeah.
Let's go get some and make some coins.
Yeah, we've got gems, silver, you name it. Well, I guess I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about the stimulus bill and how it really works. I have a couple questions. Number one is, how can we spend ourselves out of a recession? And first, though, before we get to that, I'd like to know how the Senate was able to pass an $850 billion bailout bill, which they're calling the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008. What does the Constitution say about where a bill like that should start? I thought that was
the Constitution is very careful about that. All bills for raising revenue have to originate in the House of Representatives. Right. Well, the House of Representatives had this first stimulus bill. We're talking about now late September into early October. And the House of Representatives voted down. All right. But the Senate came along and they said, well, we're going to take what they did and we're going to add. So they claim that their bill came originally out of the House of Representatives. So the Senate went ahead and they passed the stimulus bill, and it went back to the House, and then the House, second time around, the House voted for it. Is that proper? Is that constitutional? It's questionable.
Okay, yeah.
Right? It's very questionable. But anyhow, what they ended up doing was passing an $800 or $850 stimulus bill. Now, let me mention this. Some in your audience may recall a time when we were back to the Japanese were the economic boomtown. Mm-hmm. We talk about the late 80s. They actually even at one point bought Rockefeller Center.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it got sold back. But anyhow, Japanese, it was boomtown, all right? And they had a housing bubble, and they had inflated currency and so forth, and it all went down. So what did the Japanese government do?
Well, when we come back from the break, you'll tell us.
I'll tell you what the Japanese government did.
The program is Legislative Watch. Welcome back to Legislative Watch. I'm Elizabeth Allen Hodge, and in the studio today I have John McManus, who is publisher of The New American, president of the John Birch Society, author of 5 books, and an expert on the topic of the U.S. Constitution. Prior to the break, John, you were talking about Japan. You had a story for us.
Well, Japan was boomtown back in the late 80s, and pretty soon, I think it was around 92, they had the housing bubble burst, right? And the price of homes went down 80%.
We certainly know what that's about.
And they had the monetary problems, the same kind of, it was all the same kind of, exactly what has happened in our country. Right? So the Japanese government decided to intervene, and what they started doing was shoveling money into all different kinds of things. They had public works programs, they had stimulus programs, they had the massive spending of all different kinds. And they did exactly what is being done now and being suggested here. And that was in 1992, and they are still in their depression.
Oh, my.
Right? Now, I like to say, yes, it's true that the government of the United States is being looked to by the American people to do something. But what needs to be done is for government to undo something. What should they undo? They should undo all of the spending of government programs that are not constitutional, okay? Like foreign aid. President Obama has recently come out with a $51 billion foreign aid program. Here we are, you're talking about a $1.75 trillion indebtedness rising in 1 year. this current year, and they come out with a $51 billion foreign aid program. Now, fourth grader would say, no, don't do that. Maybe we need fourth graders in Congress.
Well, a fourth grader understands you can't spend money you don't
can't
have.
spend money you don't have. Now, what else should be done away with? Well, how about the Department of Education and Housing and Medicine and Welfare and so forth? George Washington had 4 cabinet positions. We got 19 today. Right? He had a Secretary of State, a Secretary of Treasury, a Secretary of War, not Defense, and an Attorney General. We don't need these other things. We got a Department of Energy. They started it back in the time when we were importing 1/3 of our energy. Tens of billions of dollars year after year after year. Now we're importing 60%.
Well, you know, it's hard for people to understand. I certainly can't grasp it, is how our president said, you know, it's a spending bill. That's what you have to do. If really we can spend our way out of this recession, you know, I could write checks and I could make my husband a millionaire and just give me the checkbook and let me go down to the mall.
Is your husband named Bernie Madoff?
Well, you know, I mean...
You know what it is? It's giving yourself a blood transfusion from one arm to the other through a leaky tube.
Oh.
Right? That's exactly what it is.
That's quite a picture, isn't it?
I mean, it's absolute asininity.
Yes.
Right?
In fact, we would laugh about this. There was a series in the 1950s, 1960s, George Burns and Gracie Allen. My
Wonderful.
Parents just loved that program.
I did myself,
and Gracie went into an appliance store. There were all kinds of appliances there on sale. And she talked to the salesman and said, well, how much is this refrigerator? Well, it's 40% off. She said, really? He said, yes. And she says, okay, I'll take it. And he said, well, we have other things on sale. Okay, well, show them to me. Well, one thing was 50% off, another 60% off. And so the salesman was just loving it because he's writing up all of these sales and he's counting his commission in his head. And Gracie's just buying one thing up after another. And finally, she turned to the salesman and said, now, when I bought enough of these appliances to pay for all of them, let me know. Well, see, we thought that was funny at the time. Now we've got a president who's telling us that's what we have to do to get out of a recession.
It's not what government should do, it's what they should undo. Right? Get back to the Constitution. Where in the Constitution is there foreign aid authorization? None. Education, none. Energy, none. Transportation, none. It's just not there. And they all swear an oath to it. Why don't we hold their feet to the fire and make them abide by it?
Well, in fact, why is it that you can't, if we're not going to follow the Constitution, why do we have it? And yet, as you said, we take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution, and nobody wants to change the Constitution.
Right.
So it seems like...
There was a comedian recently who said, I understand that they're working on building a new Constitution in Iraq. Why don't we give them ours? We're not using it anymore.
Exactly, Leno. Yes, we're not using it. In fact, I think that was when he was interviewing Congressman Ron Paul.
I don't know.
And they were talking about some of the stuff that's going on now.
Well, it's kind of sad. But, you know, happily the Constitution is still there. And if we have enough American people who are willing to put their shoulder to the wheel and demand that it get back to it, it will happen. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm traveling the country. I mean, I'm on a 40-speech tour through 25 states, and I mean, people ask me, what do you do for a living? I said, I ride airplanes. Okay. I'm all over the place. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, John. Given that the fact that much of this isn't being talked about except by you, and it's not being taught in the schools, can you refer our listeners and our viewers to where they can go for more information, especially some of the things that you mentioned? Rockefeller, I can't recall. Did you say his
book is called Memoirs. It was published in 2003, and it's probably still available.
There's also a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island.
Creature from Jekyll Island by a fellow I've known for many years, G. Edward Griffin. And Jekyll Island is where the idea for the Fed was generated. That happened in 1910. And the idea was finally filtered through Congress and so forth, through Edward Mandell House helped. And then they came out with the Federal Reserve. But it was conceived at Jekyll Island as a resort down in Georgia. Right? You know, there's a couple of points that you have to make here. Money should not be managed. Money should be a commodity. You don't manage commodities, except in a totalitarian system. Well, what's a commodity? Well, anything. Basketball, sneakers, automobiles.